one of the biggest lobby groups in the country, representing the ever-growing retail and wholesaling sector. And we are sitting on a membership of more than 3,000 retailers and wholesalers drawn from formal and informal, the informal side of the sector. And one of our biggest, or platinum members includes the likes of Muhammad Musa, Badel Wholesalers, Choppies, and Richards, Food Lovers, Pacheco Wholesalers, Porter Holdings in Rishawanele, Greens Supermarket, and Fazak, and many others. And those are some of the leading brands that fall under the banner of the Confederation of Zimbabwe Retailers. Basically, we focus on lobbying and advocacy, looking at particular issues of interest that affect the sector in terms of policy. So we come through with policy proposals and work very closely with the government. We also work with other BMOs like the Confederation of Zimbabwe Industries, Zimbabwe National Chamber of Commerce, by Zimbabwe, and the Consumer Council of Zimbabwe. And our focus there is then to promote an environment under which the retail sector can thrive, and the players can actually receive favorable attention as far as policy formulation and policy implementation is concerned. We are also very strong in assisting the policymakers in implementing policies that may have come through after, of course, thorough interrogation of sale. And we have done quite a number of national products and other national programs. In one of the programs that we carried out about a year or so ago was to facilitate and promote the acceptance of plastic money across the country. We worked with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and we went across the geographical divide of the country and engaged with the general populace, businesses, community leaders, schools, and many other institutions like non-governmental organizations. And our focus then was to ensure that with the experience that we had gained from our international exposure that we've got since we are part of many other international organizations like the E-Commerce Foundation, where we actually sit and discuss each and every year. We converge at a summit. For the past 2 years, I think it has been in Barcelona. So that exposure which we gained from how other countries are doing is the same exposure, the same expertise that we brought to Zimbabwe at that particular time to try and move away from the use of cash, which was quite prevalent in the country. The propensity to hold cash was so high because of the aftermath of 2007 and 2008, where the economy was devastated by a myriad of challenges. So from that end, we went across the country and promoted the use of swiping machines, mobile money transacting, which is now quite prevalent. And we are happy with the success because so far, I think in Zimbabwe, more than 96% of transactions are actually carried out via the mobile platforms as well as electronic platforms like swiping, etc. So we are quite happy with such a national or programs of national importance, because it is also to our benefit that we have got sanity prevailing in the economy. But of course, right now the nation is faced by quite a number of challenges regards pricing, And it would be a disservice if I don't locate the beginning of the pricing instability that is engulfed the nation. If you go back to October 2018, you may remember that government through the Ministry of Finance decided to liberalize the economy, and economic liberalization, yes, certainly it was going to come through with some of the costs that the general populace are actually experiencing right now, and coupled with that, there was also an adoption of austerity measures that were initiated. But even though the austerity measures were focusing more on the internal government itself, cutting on costs by government and its institutions, but we also then had the general population actually coming on board, for example, through the introduction of the 2% tax, which was introduced by the Minister of Finance and Economic Development. And of course, the 2% tax was going to work towards achieving one or two goals on the part of the fiscus. For example, one of the areas that the fiscus was focusing on was to ensure that the issue of revenue into the government coffers was going to certainly improve. But of course, its improvement was hinged upon the contribution of each and every Zimbabwean, as also every business, so that each one of us could contribute towards reducing the gap that was always there as far as the fiscal side of the economy is concerned. And the removal of the 1:1 exchange rate, which was fixed, removing the cap and liberalizing the exchange rate management, came through with quite a number of negatives and positives. And of course, one of the positives that we anticipated was that it was going to remove the more control by government through the regulatory bodies like the Reserve Bank over the allocation of foreign currency. And the hope was that the interbank market, which was created, was going to come through and create an equitable and fair distribution of the little resources, the foreign currency, and manage the situation from the market-based approach. Of course, we removed quite a number of bottlenecks that were also associated with the allocation system, and a lot of companies would complain that they were also not getting their allocations, which they thought would have been due. But I believe that also probably created a situation where the prices had to be based on the market performance of the interbank, availability or unavailability of the foreign currency on the interbank, and how easily accessible the foreign currency was it going to be on the interbank market. Otherwise, if it was not going to be efficiently available and sufficiently available, it would then create some other challenges that we never anticipated, like a lot of companies took a long time before they could access the foreign currency on the interbank, and that has always been another challenge that has affected many manufacturers and many retailers. But rolling over to today, we are sitting on a national crisis as far as energy and power supply is concerned. We don't have sufficient electricity to feed into the into industry, be it mining, manufacturing, etc. So where you have such gaps being experienced, and of course that was attributed to the decimation of water levels for Kariba, which has become our major source of water for electricity. So we then began to experience some power outages, and as I'm speaking, it never benefits any industry or any manufacturer or any retailer if power goes at 5 a.m. and is restored around 10 p.m. in the evening. What it has done solely for the retail sector, primarily, a lot of players now have got to resort to the use of generators. But fuel has not been available easily. But be that as it may, generators are not meant to sustain the entirety of the business cycle throughout, especially for the retail sector. You cannot open the supermarkets in the night. You've got to trade during the day, but you cannot also trade during the day without power, without electricity. So to augment that or to support the various businesses, a lot of businesses have actually come through procured and acquired generators. Unfortunately, it is quite costly to operate on a generator, because I remember speaking with one big retailer with a huge branch network, and they're saying, we've got 34 branches across the country. Surely, how are we going to be able to buy each one of them a bigger generator that can actually power the oven, the bigger ovens, that can power the delicatessen stoves, that can power the whole lighting, and etc., and even the various equipment, machinery and equipment like the butcher equipment, cold rooms, refrigeration. This has affected sales in the cold chain. You cannot order the same quantities that you used to order for all the perishable products, because especially if you look at beef, there's been a lot of shrinkage, a lot of wastages, because what remains behind cannot be stored to be sold for the following day, because it would have gone bad. Those products are so sensitive to temperatures under which they are stored, so you cannot tamper with such products. And again, it becomes a cost for abattoirs or manufacturers or suppliers to deliver in drips and drabs, because those little drops that you would have to deliver at where you procure the fuel that is expensive, and you don't need. Sometimes you enjoy the economies of scale if you deliver in large quantities, but right now it's not happening, especially on the perishable products. So those are some of the challenges that has affected the retail and the generality of the suppliers, and most of them have reduced trading terms. We used to enjoy 30-day trading terms before, but I can go back to the year 1990, I think, up to 1993, 94. I can tell you, we used to receive goods on consignment. A supplier would come and deliver, and then you would sell, and then after you have sold, you would go and pay the supplier. But that is gone, of course. While we may wish for such to retain, but I think things have changed. Obviously, 30 days was manageable, and even 14 days at least was still quite manageable, even though it still constrained the retail and wholesale business. But be that as it may, our challenge is that the generality of the suppliers, faced with the instability in pricing after the exchange rate has also been unstable, owing of course to the supply that has not been improving as much as we would have liked, and also owing to the inflationary pressures that we are experiencing in the country, which we are actually anticipating. Probably we are in a hyperinflationary environment. It has not been the situation that we would have loved to obtain, but we have got to go on, we have got to carry on with business, we've got to make sure that the country continues to tick. And this is the reason why a lot of businesses have engaged in survival mode, and they are actually in a cost containment approach, where they basically need to contain costs as much as possible and still be able to generate some revenue and keep the business going. But it is really very difficult under the current circumstances, because, for example, I was speaking with, when I went to Mount Darwin, I visited quite a number of shops there, and I spoke with one big player there, and they were telling me that only last week they ordered sugar from the sole sugar supplier. And for example, let me give just a small example. I may not use the similar figures that he gave me, but the order that he got, for example, was for $232. So he said he sold the stock. After selling the stock, he actually went on to order new stocks. And from 232, the new stock went up to around 332. So that's a huge deficit now. It certainly then means, because you have exhausted the stocks, you have sold all that you received from the supplier at 232, and the new stock that you have to pay for it to the supplier at 332. So who is going to finance the $100 difference? It is the retailer. And where are you going to get the money to finance that? That is the predicament right now as far as pricing is concerned that most formal businesses are facing. Of course, with informal traders, they can play around with the figures, they can play around with the stocks, but unfortunately, you cannot do the same if you are a formally registered and a formally trading wholesaler or retailer. So this has seen a lot of businesses suffering reduced capitalization, and a lot of even indicated that they've also, the general decline, about 20% general decline in terms of their capital, which they injected into the business, and now they have got to re-inject from their own personal, rather from other idle funds or other funds that they've got to source from somewhere. But ideally, a business has got to keep going and to keep financing itself, refinancing itself. And if you are going to go and borrow from the bank, you know that the repayment is going to be supported by what you are going to generate. But the moment then you start, selling your properties to finance such loans or to finance procurement of stocks, then you are not doing a good business. So this is the scenario where we are right now, and let alone keeping up with the demand for salary increases by the employees is also something that we've got to deal with. But generally what we have said is in association is we are going around engaging with the players, because we also did a survey where we discovered that the retail employees are one of the lowest paid employees in the country, and they're actually literally living from hands to mouth. So it's a situation that we are believing that from the engagement that is currently ongoing, we believe that it would improve. Yes, some have come through. We really have to appreciate them. They've come through and offer some living allowances, transport allowances, etc., just to cushion their employees. But we believe that we want a sustainable wages and salaries program that also empowers the employees, because one of our focus really is to get employees to be empowered by their employers, and also even further bringing out more retailers from the current crop of some of those employees that are actually employed in the sector. So I'm sure if I look at it closely, we are doing very well on that regard, and we believe that the salaries and wages of retail employees are going to improve. And of course, given the inflexibility of our labor laws, especially if you look at the collective bargaining agreement as well as the National Employment Council for the Commercial Sector, those regulations, we have got to abide by those, because they are actually emanating from the Labor Relations Act, Chapter 28, and that is basically something that we cannot avoid, but it's very inflexible because it does not entirely, it doesn't depend on how the business is performing. It's actually some fixed wage levels that we've got to pay according to the various grades. But we are happy, of course, though, that a lot of players have come through and managed to work with their employees. And yes, on the fast food, we've got quite a bigger membership, like the likes of Chicken Inn. We also have the likes of Eat and Lick. They're also part of our membership, and we are quite happy, especially with the expansion programs that such have been carrying out, and rebranding and revamping their businesses is something that we are quite happy about. And we believe that if the situation was normalized a lot of businesses have shown intention to expand. For example, we were speaking with Chokers. They're actually quite, they've got quite an exciting program, an expansion program, which they would have wanted to enroll, rather to roll out, especially during the course of this year. But it has been hampered by the obtaining situation. And remember also, we faced quite a number of challenges as a sector when we had our businesses getting looted. You remember on the 1st of August last year, unfortunately during those disturbances, I said that we ended up losing lives. May their souls rest in peace. But on the business front also, we also lost quite substantially. A lot of businesses have not recovered. January 14 to 16, we also had similar disturbances. And if you look at the Matabeleland side, a lot of players were affected and they lost their businesses, especially if you go to those shops that are in the western suburbs. I'm actually sitting on more than 150 retailers, big and small, that lost that were actually looted to the ground, ravished, a lot of equipment being burnt there. And yes, government came through with a 30 million Zimbabwean dollar facility, which we are quite grateful about. But we, of course, suffered from the delays in the procurement and allocation of that of such funds. The disbursement took a bit longer, and the money was also eroded by inflation, and a lot ended up not being able to procure equipment and also the stocks that they required, because most of the suppliers also wanted to get some guarantees that their monies were going to be paid. So we are quite, of course, in a catch-22 situation. And we are quite optimistic, though, despite the negatives, despite the challenges that we are facing as an economy. What we pray for is that the economy turns the corner, and we are also happy that Zimbabweans have remained quite peace-loving. And this is something that we need to promote. Peace and development, goes side by side. Otherwise, they are Siamese twins, if I may call them, because you cannot have development without peace. And with peace, you can also then promote development. So these are some of the areas that we need to keep focusing on as a country. And we are hopeful, although of course that with the support that we have been getting from generality of Zimbabweans. Yes, as we speak right now, the retail sector is one of the biggest contributor to the GDP. And I remember back then in 2017, government actually confirmed that the retail sector contributes about 57% to the GDP. So that's a huge contribution, and we believe that if sanity prevails, with all the work that we are doing right now, going around the country, working with the informal and SME retailers, trying to help them to formalize so that they can also contribute in terms of paying taxes to the fiscus, because it is actually a duty of each and every one of us, small and established, to actually be able to contribute towards payment of taxes, so that the environment can also improve in terms of policy. And of course, we also are doing quite a number of issues, programs. Like right now, we actually going across the country promoting responsible pricing. So we are engaging with the players, and we are also engaging with the consumers, because we believe that it takes the consumer and the retailer and the manufacturer and the whole value chain for the issue of pricing to be improved. But of course, away from that, it also requires predictability in terms of our policies. We have got to be very predictable, and we launched our own currency. Now we are using our own currency, but that has got also to be supported by quite a number of issues like production. If you introduce your own currency in an environment where production is not taking place, you are bound to face some of the challenges that we are facing right now: the exchange rate instability, currency instability, inflationary pressures, and also even the speculative tendencies that you now see taking center stage in the pricing and also even in the doing business across the country. It emanates from that. And what we are simply saying here is that as a country, we're endowed with natural resources. We've got minerals, we've got gold. But if you look at the leakages that we are experiencing on gold alone, And yet gold could actually propel us to the promised land that we all wish to go to. But right now, with the leakages that are taking place, it will be very difficult for us to get to a point where we sanitize this. But what we're basically saying is, surely, if it is the price, because I'm sure when we spoke with quite a number of artisanal miners, they're talking about the price. They are saying the price of gold has got to be right. Because now we have a situation where some illegal buyers are mopping all the gold and it's actually crossing the borders, our porous borders, and it's going out. So we are saying if we could contain that as a nation, we could use gold, plug all the leakages, offer the right price, and even the borders where it's leaking, where it's actually going out easily. We can actually put up some, we modernize those borders, we put up some scanners where we reduce the human interface, because the moment we've got increased human interface between an officer or a border controller and a traveler, then there are bound to be corrupt activities taking place. But you can replace human beings at those borders, limit the number of human beings that are operating there, the number of people there, install machines. One has got to go through some checks. For example, I was in China recently, and in Guangzhou, at Guangzhou airport. You pass through, I think, more than 10 scanners. So if you've got anything, if you've got a needle, or if you've got a nail, whatever you may have, it's picked there and then. So I think if we are really serious as a country, we can invest in digitalization, technological advancement, adopt the current technology, install it at all the ports of entry, especially your main ports like Bay Bridge, Chirundu, Nyamapanda. You can actually then install such machines and then ensure that the checks are actually quite pragmatic and quite extensive and intensive, and as well as ensuring that there is no room for corruption. We can contain and control the gold that we have. So that's one area that I'm quite passionate about. But of course, primary industry is very key, like I indicated, especially if you look at agricultural production. We have not done well on that front. We've got command agriculture, but the land utilization aspect is not something that is quite pleasing. And what we believe is that we have given room to those that are currently farming at various farms that they were allocated, be it A1, A2, or at communal level. But surely there should actually be a monitoring and evaluation system that monitors and evaluates productivity at those farms. If one is not producing, especially after receiving inputs, then we need to come through with a robust system. Like China, I keep giving them as a reference. You cannot, it's difficult for you, you'll be lucky to own more than 23 hectares. But at that 23 hectare plot or farm or land area, there's production taking place throughout the year. And this is why we've also even indicated that if we don't invest in irrigation and irrigation equipment, then we may continue to wait for the rains, but it's not sufficient. And during droughts like this, we end up importing a lot. Now we are actually looking up to importing more than 700,000 tons of maize. But sitting on arable, fertile land like we are, it's not sustainable. Look at our import bill. This has been one of the Achilles heel for this economy. The import bill is so huge, and it is growing each day. And if you look at the composition of what we import, it's an embarrassment. We are embarrassing because we are importing certain commodities, certain goods that we can manufacture here. But it takes you and me to go on the ground, procure, get systems in place, get projects in place, get financing platforms in place to help those that may wish to go and do production. Because if you do not do that, then you may continue to have fewer manufacturers, like in our case. We've got some monopolies. Certain products we only have one supplier, like sugar, we only have one supplier. Beverages, we've got two, and then many others. Look at other products. We do not have a a number of manufacturers manufacturing these products to create the competition that has been much competition is there right now between the formal retail and informal retail. That largely has helped to stabilize prices as it were, because the pricing levels that we would have been experiencing right now could actually be shocking in the current situation of hyperinflation. So we believe that with many suppliers, many manufacturers, prices can actually stabilize in the country.
For these and other stories, visit our website www.263chat.com. Follow us on Twitter @263chat and like our Facebook page 263chat.